Earlier today, Chelsea Manning spoke out against journalist Glenn Greenwald. So now on Thursday, Manning took to Twitter. Here's what she said. Glenn Greenwald, I don't have $10,000 right now, but if I get it, I want to send it back to you from a donation you once did. I can't deal with this anymore. I'm terrified of you and everything you do. You're greedy, unprincipled, and I'm embarrassed for ever considering you a friend. Wow. So, look, that's pretty heavy. That's some pretty heavy criticism, greedy, unprincipled, etc. Oof. So now she continues by saying, last night during the floods, I decided that I'm no longer going to be afraid of saying what's on my mind or taking a stand from the people that I once considered allies, but who have chosen to bash, harass, humiliate, intimidate, and lie to get ahead. To those he has hurt, I'm sorry. I didn't say anything. I was scared, and that's my fault. So, again, I'm calling it drama, but it is fairly serious. Because here's somebody who I deeply, deeply respect, Chelsea Manning. She's a goddamn hero, right? She exposed a collateral murder video in Iraq. She spent time in prison. She attempted numerous, let me give you a content warning on this, suicide attempts, okay? And Glenn Greenwald was one of her biggest advocates during that time. No doubt. Again, he sent her $10,000 in order to help her out. So now what changed? What's going on? What happened? These people that, used to be fairly close. Well, again, she did say, unprincipled, greedy, and that they bash, harass, humiliate, intimidate, and lie to other people in order to get ahead. So she's saying that, look, he's saying false things about people and certain things that I disagree with. So, look, for me, I've been pretty silent about this for a while, and one of the reasons, really, and I'm going to be honest with you, is that the backlash is immense. Backlash is gigantic. So Chelsea Manning coming out with this after everything that she's been through, I think is pretty strong. Okay, and so I tend to err on the side of Chelsea Manning on this. And as far as everything else goes, personally, I've noticed a change in Glenn Greenwald. Now, let me just caveat this, right? So I think he did amazing work as a journalist, co-founder of The Intercept, an excellent publication, fought against the security state, both here in America and his home. Of course, I think his body of work is near legendary. But then you go to his Twitter account, and it's trash. It is his timeline is hot trash. Let's be honest about that, okay? I had to mute Glenn Greenwald. He's fighting with everybody. He's fighting with The Intercept because they decided not to post a trash story about Hunter Biden. For one, nobody gives a goddamn about Hunter Biden other than weird reactionary right-wingers. It's the laptop story. And by the way, it was just like, hey, I need to make some edits here, because that's what we do to make sure that the story is correct, that we have all the facts that accounted for. Let you publish it, but we got to make a couple of changes to make sure that we're actually being honest about this story. Didn't like that, so we decided to move to Substack. And so, same thing. You look at his timeline, he talks about cancel culture a lot. He goes on Fox News, talks about cancel culture. He said the cancel mobs are coming for you. What does that even mean? That's not a thing. Cancel culture doesn't actually exist. And what happens when somebody big gets canceled? We'll ask Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan's been canceled, right? Oh, that's right. He got COVID, but is recovering very nicely with this $100 million Spotify deal. You look at anybody decrying cancel culture, and you're going to find one thing in common: that apparently being canceled is amazing for your career, especially in the right wing. You get podcast deals, you write books, you go on Fox News. Well, that sounds awesome. I want to be canceled. Cancel me. I need some notoriety. Sure. No, look, if there's a real cancel culture, it is the one which further silences powerless people, the powerless people who never, ever even had a voice to begin with. That's real cancel culture, okay? Not somebody with a gigantic platform with millions of followers and 20 to 40,000 subscribers on Substack. He's not been canceled. Okay. And look, here's the thing. If you want to criticize mainstream journalists, and Glenn Greenwald obviously does a lot of that, that's totally fine. I got no love for mainstream journalists, right? When they report terrible stories, and I think they deserve to be called out. And he has done that, sometimes rightly, sometimes wrongly. And so I'm being incredibly fair. But let me just say that Glenn Greenwald himself is not above criticism. And nobody is. Nobody should be. Yes, you should criticize people when they get things wrong and when they pump out bad takes. And so for the last couple of years, I don't know what happened, but Glenn Greenwald has been out there putting out some really trash takes on Twitter. Weird hot takes, sometimes even doing a transphobia. Earlier this year, Greenwald cited a Gallup poll looking at LGBT plus populations in the U.S. Now, again, Glenn's strength is battling against established power bases, right? That's where he shines at. Battle censorship, great, wonderful. What are you doing talking about like social issues? Weird. It's weird. And so he wrote this. There's been a huge explosion in the number of Americans identified as LGBT. Close to 1 out of every 5 Gen Z so identifies. That's more than a 4-fold increase from Gen X. But almost all the increase comes from those identifying as bi or trans, not gay or lesbian. All right, well, there's a very simple explanation for this. People are more acceptable, trans people are more acceptable in today's society than it used to be. That explains the numbers. And I think that's a good thing. He then cited lesbian Katie Herzog and said, there are now, among millennials and Gen Z, more people identifying as trans than lesbian. She has previously argued that masculine girls are now encouraged to identify as trans, causing a decrease in the lesbian population. So what is this? So is he agreeing with somebody that is blaming trans people for there being less lesbians? That's strange to me. Even though, of course, the same poll that he had referenced noted that the number of lesbians actually increased and not decreased. So actually kind of wrong on that one. Also seemed to be confused about bisexuality, categorized bisexual relationships as hetero-appearing and ones that are gay and / lesbian ones, as if he doesn't quite understand that you could be a bisexual person and be in a relationship with, say, you're a woman, be in a relationship with a man or a woman. It doesn't really matter. Bisexual just means you like both. Odd, right? Odd. And I say that in this context because, well, Chelsea Manning happens to be a trans woman, and Glenn himself is gay. But understand that in the gay community, bi and trans issues are not handled as well as they should by people who identify as gay. And so I think they're kind of bad on bi and trans issues. And understand that does appeal to certain people, transphobes, TERFs, right-wingers. And so I've been seeing this pattern where Glenn will wade into social issues hot button stuff with some pretty nuclear takes and appeal to a right-wing audience on that. And that's a little weird. And of course, he's attacked left-leaning journalists and commentators, sometimes correctly, sometimes incorrectly, in my opinion. So I'm not sure what's happened. Maybe he's just always been reactionary, and maybe I just finally realized it. Maybe we're starting to catch on, but he's just always been this way. I don't know. I don't know for sure. And look, I have a lot of respect for his prior work, but it seems like he's going down a right-wing path, a reactionary path, and I'm not in favor of that. I mean, just recently in a video for Rumble, he promoted ivermectin for COVID-19, talking about Hunter's laptop, talks about how Democrats are the actual fascists. They're in favor of big tech censorship, going on Fox News. No, look, I don't have a problem with people going on Fox News, okay? If you're going to push back, like, go on Fox News, please promote the progressive agenda, right? Now, that's, of course, if you believe in the progressive agenda, but going back to Glenn, he's not a leftist, he's not a progressive, he's a libertarian. And that's self-described libertarian. And so maybe we just ascribed a leftist aesthetic because a lot of the stuff that he was doing prior to this was stuff that we agreed with. You know, taking on the security state, taking on censorship, which primarily, when you look at the right wing, they're the OG censors. That just seems like me. I don't know. But again, I do agree with criticizing journalists. I do agree with criticizing their surveillance state. But of course, the culture, you know, cancel culture stuff, the seeming transphobia, supporting Tucker Carlson, I'm not in favor of that. That seems to be too much for me. But, you know, maybe you can say, look, you don't understand. He just hates big tech. He hates censorship. He hates big tech. All right, well, fine. I do too, right? Well, let's break it up. Let's use the antitrust laws. Let's go with that route. Is he going out there and promoting that and promoting using antitrust or something to break up this big, this big tech, this issue with, you know, Facebook and YouTube and et cetera, right? And Twitter. Has he called to break them up? Not that I've seen, and maybe I'm wrong. I mean, if somebody could direct me and say, actually, no, he did this long segment about how we should break up the Facebook and the tech industry. Okay, sure, I agree with that. Great, wonderful. But as far as I know, look, as long as big tech is a thing, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to direct you to their Substacks or their Patreons or Rumble pages or whatever, and make a lot of money off of it. And I think that's capitalism, obviously, and that definitely, I think, might play a part in this, because I have noticed one thing. There's one thing I've noticed, and this has to do with the overall social media cycle. Democrats are in power, which means a lot of Democratic viewers aren't watching YouTube. They're not watching anything. What they're doing, what's going on now is you're going to see a surge in right-wing channels, conservative channels, anti-establishment channels. All right? So that's what's going to happen, and that's what you're seeing right now. Biden's into power, liberals went to brunch, and now it's online rage fest for right-wingers and disaffected leftists, right? And so if you're gonna go where the money is, conceivably you would go to a right-wing audience if that's what you're concerned about, and that's what Dave Rubin did. I'm not saying 100% that this is what Glenn Greenwald is doing. I don't know for sure, but it feels like it to me. It does. And so I hear doing that is quite lucrative in these times. So I don't know. I don't know for sure. But what I can tell you is this segment brings me no joy. I didn't want to do this. I know I'm going to get swamped with angry people. And that's part of, people like Glenn Greenwald having an incredibly large audience, much, much larger than my own. And so I know what's going to happen. How dare you smear this actual journalist? Well, for one, I'm not smearing his journalism. I actually gave him a lot of respect for the stuff that he has done in the past. And I think it's great. And I would love to see the return of the Glenn Greenwald that pushed against some of this stuff that he had done in the past. I'd love to see that. As far as a smear, I don't know. I don't think I've done any smearing. I just have an opinion. This is free speech. If you're a free speech advocate, you could say, well, that's your opinion, man. Because it is. And by the way, I'm not even a journalist. I'm a talking head. It's my job to share my opinion online. And in my opinion, I don't think the road that Glenn Greenwald is going is good for the left. Not good for the leftists. I think it does empower the right wing, who in themselves, as I mentioned, are the original, censorship, pro-censorship, pro-cancel culture people. And yes, it is important to point out that the establishment does that to some extent. But if you're getting real cozy with the right wing, well then, who's going to benefit from that? It ain't the left. It ain't the leftists. It's the right wing. But of course, I already know all the arguments that people are going to use. That I'm a shit neolib, smear artist, establishment tool, MSNBC, like pro-censorship. You're not a real progressive, blah. I don't care. All right? I'm always going to give you my opinion, even if it's unpopular. I know this segment is probably going to do incredibly terrible. Not only that, but it's going to get downvoted to oblivion, and that's fine. But I got to be honest with you. I got to give you my opinion. I don't really care about the clicks and views. And I'm not going to tell you things that I don't believe in to get those clicks and views. You want to cancel me? Go ahead. I'm ready for it. Do whatever. I'm ready for it. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf. Or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.